Growing up in a family that listened to classic rock was a great way to start my musical journey as a kid. One of the few CDs I had in the 90s was the Black Magic Woman compilation. 2 tracks stood out above all: Soul Sacrifice and Jingo. Songs with a primal energy, a cry for love, freedom, and discovery. By the time Supernatural came out in '99, I wasn't looking for chart-topping pop collaborations. I wanted the raw, untamed energy of vintage Santana, like Persuasion. Fast forward to my teens when my classic rock uncle recommended Santana 3. That sealed it. This band became, next to the Zeppelin, a vital part of my live soundtrack. Watching the Woodstock movie on Cinemax only drove it deeper, with Soul Sacrifice stealing the show in a way even Monday Morning Jimmy couldn't erase. Record store clerks kept telling me to get Abraxas, but it felt too easy, too available. Then I learned that wasn't their debut. It's the one with the lion, my classic rock uncle said. I went on a hunt for the version with a psychedelic typography and found the 1998 reissue, complete with 3 live Woodstock cuts. I couldn't decide which Soul Sacrifice I loved more, but the studio album material was a revelation. It sounded like a pristine 60s Latin jazz record. I later got these for my collection, and Santana 1 rivaled them as a confident collision of ideas, emotions, and devotion. Too often I've had to battle classic rock fans who either ignore this record entirely or think Abraxas is their whole universe. So after 4 documentaries on Santana, it's time to return to the birthplace of a revolution. When most people think of Santana at Woodstock, they picture a young, hungry band exploding onto the scene in one legendary performance. But the truth is, that moment was built on 151 shows, multiple lineups, and years of relentless performing from 1967 to 1969. Guitar players are not the full picture, but the sum of all parts together, because Santana at Woodstock wasn't luck. It was the sound of a band already built for a war. This is the Woodstock and Lion story, the untold making of their first album and the day they conquered the world. I recently walked into a venue I'd never been to before for a rock concert, and what caught my eye was a giant mural. Staring back at me was Carlos Santana. In that moment, I knew it was a sign, the confirmation I needed to make this episode. A record I own 2 copies of, a 6-man team that stole the show, in concert and beyond. This is the making of Santana. It was Sunday, November 13th, 1966. Jimmy Page and the Yardbirds played Baltimore Civic Center. Over on the West Coast, it was a special evening at the Fillmore Auditorium, San Francisco. Headliner Brazilian guitarist Bola Sege, plus several supporting bands including Country Joe and the Fish and Buffalo Springfield. 2 other bands were not on the bill but rocked the audience: Rake's Progress and the Mocker Manor Blues Band, featuring a 19-year-old guitarist by the name of Carlos Santana. Like many aspiring musicians back then, he was finding himself in the local scene and played every possible gig: weddings, dance halls, and outdoor gatherings. His luck changed in January 1967 after an impromptu jam at the Fillmore during the set break in a Butterfield Blues Band show. That jam had Michael Carabello on percussion. Legendary Fillmore's owner Bill Graham enjoyed the music and offered them a couple of dates. Among audience members that evening were guitarist Tom Fraser and keyboard player Gregg Rolie. Fraser called every Santana on the phone book and tracked Carlos down through his mother. Tom went over to the TikTok burger joint where Carlos worked as a dishwasher. He invited him for a rehearsal with Rolie, Gus Rodriguez on bass, Danny Haro on drums, and Mike Carabello. the Santana Blues Band was born. They played their second ever show on March 17, 1967. Audience member and drummer Michael Shrieve loved their set and wanted to play with them one day. By June, Carlos had tuberculosis. Some shows were postponed. Santana met Jimi Hendrix backstage, and they were late to a Fillmore show, which got them blacklisted by Bill Graham for tardiness. Fast forward December 1967, and the Santana Blues Band Mark V was 14 concerts into their career, featuring Carlos, Marcus Malone on percussion, Doug Livingston on drums, Gregg Rolie on keys, and Groove Master second cousin to Billy Preston, David Brown on bass. Already on their setlist was their take on Nigerian drummer Babatunde Olatunji's Jingo Loba. Released in 1960, it was a hit with infectious rhythms and pristine Columbia jazz recording techniques. French musician Serge Gainsbourg did his own take on Babatunde's work for his 1964 Gainsbourg Percussions. The Santana Blues Band slowly moved away from the traditional blues rock approach, influenced by the Latin jazz frenzy and their free spirit vibes around. They worked out their plans to conquer California, living at 145 Hartford Street, San Francisco. Up in San Rafael, local rockers The Aliens were already a household name over at the Bermuda Palms Hotel, made of musicians like the acclaimed Coronado Brothers, Nicaraguan-born singer Frank Zavala, drummer Oscar Calderon, Javier Alizaga on bass, and timbales percussion prodigy José Chepito Davila. Born on July 25, 1946 in León, Nicaragua, he started playing trumpet at the age of 6. By his teens, he was playing timbales all over the country with famous dance floor band Los Satélites del Ritmo. At age 17, he traveled to the US, working his way through the music scene with a unique sound. Some people compare him to Tito Puente. He was a loud personality with absolute conviction of his musicianship. He made a name for himself fast with the Aliens. 1968, the Santana Blues Band's live momentum expands to 73 concerts, with most of the action happening in California. That's 71 gigs in the West Coast Golden State. January through May saw them perform many times at San Francisco's The Matrix, Stray Theater, and both Carousel and Avalon ballrooms. They branched out to the Arc in Sausalito, Foothill College in Santa Clara, and Balconites Ballroom in San Jose. band managed to audition for Tuesday night spots at the Fillmore despite being verbally blacklisted. The band's manager, Stan Markham, convinced promoter Bill Graham that they had a new vibe, new songs, and a new name. They got a June 16th spot and a year ban lifted up. They dropped the blues band thing and performed as Santana. More shows followed, including a July 1968 gig in Sacramento, next to the electric flag of Mike Bloomfield and Buddy Miles fame, two key friendships in Carlos's music path. A July 28th event was one of the first of many festivals for Santana, on the same bill as future Hall of Famers Creedence and iconic footprints with names like Quicksilver Messenger Service. Their setlist added more fusion flair through a vital jam piece, Willie Bobo's 1966 hit Fried Neck Bones and Some Home Fries, from the seminal Latin jazz release Uno, Dos, Tres. These sounds would greatly influence the way Santana approached their fusion cooking on stage. August 27, 1968. Another Fillmore West out of 17 times the band played there in 68, but this one extra special. American artist Lee Conklin's psychedelic designs produced a now famous Lionhead poster for Santana's 3-day series next to Steppenwolf and the Staple Singers. Carlos kept an eye on this design that would come in handy in less than a year. 2 festival spots followed, plus more Fillmore West dates, including September 28th, when Carlos was a guest on a Columbia Records live recording, The Live Adventures of Mike Bloomfield and Al Cooper. Santana's guitar was captured on the track Sonny Boy Williamson, making it his major record label debut of sorts. Noticeable at the time was Carlos's guitar. Where many contemporaries used Les Pauls or Stratocasters, he went for a 1960s Gibson SG in the style of Eric Clapton with Cream and Pete Townsend with The Who. This guitar had a distinct sound that made it versatile for both syncopated rhythm and rapid-fire soloing without sounding too bright nor having the low-end muddy sounds. Carlos pushed the blues into Latin soul flexibility. Santana's live show popularity grew in the jam band circuit, and they managed to sign a record deal with Columbia in October 1968, despite having no singles nor demos on their backs. But word was out, they were one of the premier jam bands in San Francisco. Although they were not the first nor only rock band to experiment with Latin music trails, they were in the right time and the right place, just as Fania All Stars got started through their Live at the Red Garter Volume 1 release. December was a photo finish month for Santana with a fortnight run at the Fillmore, where Columbia set the controls for a potential live album release. Pushed back until 1997, it remains a fascinating snapshot of what the 5-piece of Carlos, Gregg Rolie, David Brown, Doug Livingstone, and Marcus Malone was back then. The template for the band's future breakthroughs reveals their shape-shifting essence, perfecting the art of jamming with the elements at hand. Live at the Fillmore was produced by recording engineer David Robinson, whose works at the time included the Chamber Brothers, Moby Grape, Mongo Santa Maria, 1960s masterpiece, The United States of America, and John Bonham's former boss before going for the New Yardbirds, Tim Rose. Santana's Fillmore set sheds light on original compositions Persuasion, Treat, Chunk and Funk, a still embryonic Soul Sacrifice, and tour de force crowd favorite Freeway, clocking in at 30 minutes. More concerts followed to celebrate a busy year of highlights and hard work. They could only go up from here. Sky was the limit, but they wondered if they would ever step outside California. 1969 started off as usual, but then Santana went into Columbia's recording studio for the first time with producer David Robinson. Carlos switched to a Gibson Les Paul for these sessions, but capturing lightning in a bottle proved a challenge. Plans for an album by the name of Freeway Jam were underway, but neither the band nor the label were happy with the results. The recording was shelved for more than 30 years.
You got persuasion.
Percussion player Marcos Malone was charged with manslaughter and was sent to prison, a huge blow for the band's momentum with the co-writer of Soul Sacrifice now gone. Enter Mike Carabello back into Santana to resume touring while they celebrated Carlos's guest spot on the February 1969 release of The Live Adventures of Mike Bloomfield and Al Kooper. With Columbia Records now behind them, concert promotion grew, sharing the stage with late 60s names like Iron Butterfly, It's a Beautiful Day, and the usual San Francisco Cats. Santana experienced another lineup change midway through March. Alleged creative differences led to drummer Doug Livingston being asked to leave the band, and his temporary replacement was nothing short of influential for Santana. Johnny Ray was a drummer who played on several Called Jaded recordings, now Latin jazz classics. From In a Latin Bag to Soña Libre, his works include essentials like Soul Sauce and Soul Bird, next to percussion giants Willie Bobo and feature Santana collaborator Armando Peraza. Ray's skills extended to timbales and congas, thus elevating the band's groove and sense of rhythm late March through early April. Big-time Latin rock energy with plans to take over the United States, but still, Santana remained in California. Nowadays the home for Sundance, spas, and saunas. But back in early April 1969, a rehearsal space and recording studio where Santana fine-tuned their set, 19-year-old drummer Michael Shrieve arrived to book some studio time. Carlos knew him from Fillmore West jams and invited him to play some tunes. The rest is history. Shrieve was asked to join Santana and moved into their San Francisco residence. Shrieve made his live debut midway through April with a series of high-profile gigs, opening for British legends Procol Harum at the Rose Palace, Pasadena, the same place where Vanilla Fudge, Deep Purple, and Led Zeppelin made their early-day footprints. Then Santana's luck struck twice in early May past the Spring Flush Festival in Seattle, Washington. Michael Carabello hung out near the San Francisco Bridge over at the Playland at the Beach amusement park. He played a jam session that day and met a guy who joined in who could play congas, timbales, and trumpet. They called him Chepito. Carabello, Carlos, and Gregg Rolie went to see the Aliens with Chepito Areas at the Nightlife nightclub. José Areas Davila accepted the offer and joined Santana. The band's Mark III lineup was now complete: Areas, Brown, Carabello, Rolie, Shrieve, and Santana. Pacific Recording Studios were booked for a 5-day session. Columbia sound engineer Bob Briault led the recording sessions next to Eric Prestige. Briault's resume by 1969 is an exciting listen, as one can appreciate his soft spot for ambient room sound and balance in pure Rudy Van Gelder jazz tradition that greatly benefited Santana's sound design. There are countless bootleg CD compilations of Santana's Pacific Recording Studio jams, packed with precious outtakes that never made final cut. Yet they revealed just how productive the Mark III lineup was in exploring the sonic possibilities of flow. Noticeable on these early day snapshots was the band's proclivity for extensive jams that, while suited for concerts, didn't necessarily translate the same on record. Many voices close to the camp, including Fillmore's own Bill Graham, suggest that they trim down the lengthy instrumentals and add some hit single material for a chance at catering to a bigger audience. In came keyboard player soulmaster Alberto Gianquinto, known for his work with the Blue Soul Funk act, the James Cotton Blues Band. By 1969, he had done a couple of albums with them, including several songwriting credits for tunes like Soul Survivor, Little Red Riding Hood, and The Mule. The Alvin Bishop Group debut was also on his agenda when Santana got him on board as arranger. Gianquinto's task was not easy: polish the transitions, instrumental jam sections, and optimize the band's musical approach. Alberto's role was vital, thus his arrangement credit on the album was similar to what George Martin was to the Beatles, the seventh Santana member that rarely gets discussed in classic rock circles. Gianquinto was a vital contributor into what the album came to be. The record's final selection went for 9 tracks, best of both worlds, spontaneous flow, memorable riffs, and catchy choruses. Santana's blend of blues tradition, Latin jazz, and rock and roll made for a unique combination. Carlos's guitar tone recalled Hendrix, Clapton, and B.B. King, yet what set him apart was a romanticism of Latin music, think Los Panchos and the Spanish nylon string guitar tradition woven into his phrasing. Track 1, Waiting, opens up side A, inspired by both 1960s jingo and a Cuban rhythm by the name of guaguancó. The song moves around the chord of G minor, with Gregg Rolie playing blues-inspired Hammond organ licks a la Jimmy Smith. Carlos's crunchy double-string theme set the mood for this instrumental overture that announces the arrival of Latin rock in America. That double string on the guitar was probably inspired by Hendrix All Along the Watchtower. Track 2, Evil Ways, comes next, using the same G minor mood of Waiting, the first of 2 covers on the album. It was written in 1967 by guitarist Sonny Henry, released via Willie's Bob Emotion album. José Chepito locked down the groove on lead cowbell and timbales, leading the band with dancehall passion, up there with Tito Puente's Oye Como Va. The duet of Gregg Rolie and backing vocals by Carlos create playful verses that describe a partner's free love actions that make up for an unstable relationship. Carefully constructed blues organ and guitar solos provided the perfect vehicle to blend in with late 60s rock and roll fire. Track 3, Shades of Time, is a powerful deep cut led by Carlos's masterful control of double-string crunch motifs, next to elegant, clean jazz guitar phrasing in the style of one of his music heroes, Gabor Szabo, or Gabor Szabo. Vocals by Rolie and Carlos go for a call and response storytelling with an interesting choice of chords: G minor, C, B flat, and D, followed by a transition mood: E minor, B flat, and D. The guitar solo is filled with exquisite note selection, amplified by the killer rhythm section of Chepito, Carabello, and Shrieve, cooking a hot soul sauce behind. Track 4, Sabor, picks up the G minor chord vibes of Waiting for a slight jam return, this time led by Chepito's frantic work on timbales, next to Gregg Rolie's Hammond organ soulful textures. A clever fade-out sends the listener into track 5, Jingo. Their cover of the 1960s tune is nothing short of spectacular. Just like Led Zeppelin with Dazed and Confused, Santana revamped Jingo into a cinematic listening experience. David Brown's thick bass line of B and D over Rolie's Hammond organ drone voicings are pure bliss. Mike Shrieve's potent drums lock in with Carabello and Chepito's tsunami of conga pulses. Carlos' epic guitar solo was double-tracked in places to deepen the impeccable lament of rapid blues intentions. Side B, track 1, Persuasion, seems like one of the earliest American heavy metal songs, with a unusual choice of chords: F minor and A flat minor, plus the chromatic descent on C, B flat, A flat, G, and F sharp, reminiscent of Willie Bobo's Fried Neck Bones. Clocking in at only 2 minutes 30 seconds, the track lures you before unleashing quintessential Santana, menacing, relentless, and unforgettable. Track 2, Treat, is just that, a treat to the senses. Same chords as Evil Ways, but ever so impressive how Santana can take the same harmonic principles and build a memorable jam. Highlight piano work by Gregg Rolie showcased his fabulous tempo. Carlos joined him with a G Mixolydian scale fretboard passion work. Track 3, a personal favorite deep cut, You Just Don't Care. It doesn't feature Latin percussion at all, but this heavy blues piece embodies every electric guitar angle early day Carlos could deliver in a 4-piece setting with Demolition Man work by Shrieve, Brown, plus Rolie's heroic vocals. A what-if scenario if Santana stayed in a blues band. This could very well rival Hendrix. Track 4, Soul Sacrifice. The reason this band was meant to be. A deceivingly simple riff and jam whose masterful execution remains a rock milestone. The very definition of teamwork that captured something no other American group managed to. Vital and primal energy without boring the listener, music beyond music for musicians, music for humanity. One of the greatest album closers of the 60s, captured to sonic perfection, including Mike Shrieve's iconic and musical drum solo. Santana went back to playing the usual venues but managed to score several festival slots, like Pacific Pop, where local newspapers used a Mark II photograph. The Northern Folk Rock Festival in San Jose was great exposure in a bill where Led Zeppelin was scheduled to perform but chose to stay in Chicago for a second night at the Kinetic Playground. Jimi Hendrix was also booked and Carlos got to watch him perform on May 25th. A life-changing experience it was. Promoter Bill Graham dropped a bomb on Santana. He would send them to the East Coast for a festival by the name of Woodstock. Graham was emphatic. This would be a game-changing moment for them. The contract with Woodstock Ventures Inc. was dated June 16, 1969, for a total wage of $1,500. That's $750 for their show, plus another $750 for film rights upon signing, which meant a potential movie release would sure make for great publicity. Names on the document were Michael Lang and Carlos Santana in representation of the band. They agreed on a 45-minute set, with promoters supplying a minimum of 12 microphones. Santana kept themselves busy all through mid-July, building momentum while they finished mixing the album. Precious onstage training, honing their craft, perfecting their style, ascending into California's rock and roll elite. They joined the Seattle Pop Festival's colorful lineup of stars for a Friday, July 25th show. Led Zeppelin followed on Sunday. Santana was becoming a household name, which was backed by a July 30th, 1969 CBS Columbia Records annual convention at LA Century Plaza Hotel. Santana's upcoming debut was a topic of discussion in a room filled with record label executives and staff. The band played a private showcase that evening. A promotional tour was booked and they flew to the East Coast. August 1969, Blood, Sweat and Tears had the #1 album on Billboard. Yes and Jethro Tull had just released their debut. Miles' In a Silent Way began his electric period, and some 180,000 tickets had been sold for Woodstock. Santana played their first ever Fillmore East New York City dates, bottom of the bill next to Canned Heat and Three Dog Night. They moved to Atlantic City's Pop Festival on the 3rd, next to many future Hall of Famers and Woodstock mates. The late 60s vibrations, good vibrations. While they played an early afternoon time slot, no one could ignore the sounds coming from the speakers, performed by San Francisco's Giants. Flushing Meadows, New York followed on August 8th and 9th. They moved to Central Park on the 10th for more Latin rock explosions. Their debut album was now 20 days away from release. One more show to go at New York State University on the 11th, and then 5 days off before heading out to Bethel.
The Woodstock Music and Art Fair, the 3-day Aquarian Exposition, will be held at White Lake in the town of Bethel, Sullivan County, New York, Saturday, August 16th. Canned Heat, Creedence Clearwater, Grateful Dead, Keith Hartley, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Mountain, Santana, and The Who. Tickets are available by mail or at your local ticket agency for any one day at $7, and a 2 days, $14, and for all 3 days, $18.
Saturday, August 16th. Unlike Iron Butterfly and others, Santana faced no highway delays and arrived on helicopter. The Woodstock side welcomed them with open arms and open grass. Playing for a crowd of almost 500,000 people was intimidating to say the least. Carlos talked to Jerry Garcia. He said the Grateful Dead would play at 1 a.m., so Carlos thought they would go at 3 a.m. Garcia gave him a magic 60s vitamin. It was LSD. Carlos was then shocked to know they had to play in less than an hour. He asked God, quote, "Help me stay in tune and in time." The band faced little competition before their scheduled time slot passed East Coast rockers Quill and a solo spot by fellow Fillmore buddy Country Joe McDonald. And so they took the stage at 2 p.m. for an 8-song setlist of pretty much their debut album, except Shades of Time and Treat, an unpretentious stage design that would let the music do all the talking. Many thought they were just another jam band. They proved the skeptics wrong. Santana added their live staple Fried Neck Bones, where Chepito Areas, wearing passion red, would play a mean trumpet solo beyond timbales and congas. David Brown wore a red net cap, aqua blue shirt, black vest, and striped trousers, rocking his 1964 Fender Jazz Bass with its distinctive chrome plate. Mike Carabello chose a white vest, reminiscent of Jimmy's Monday morning look. He rocked them groovy-looking congas. Carlos went for a patterned black vest to go with a red Gibson SG of challenging feedback whistles and tuning pegs that proved to be a headache in between songs. Mike Shrieve wore a dark shirt patterned with gold motifs. He played a Ringo-style 1967 Ludwig kit. It's incredible to think he got those sounds from those relatively simple drums. Gregg Rolie wore a black tank top to shake Woodstock's ground through vital Hammond organ energy. Santana had the great fortune of going the day after Friday's acoustic performances. Their Latin rock sound became an event itself, raising the sonic bar quite high for the bands that followed. Promoter Bill Graham watched his protégés steal the show, making San Francisco proud. One of the conditions Graham set for helping Woodstock Ventures secure artists was that Santana be given a chance, a power move they would be forever grateful for. The festival's film crew shot both Evil Ways and a career-defining performance of Soul Sacrifice with many highlights. Carlos's superb delivery, including that open-string neoclassical lick. Mike Shrieve's powerhouse drum solo. He just turned 20 in July. Chepito and Carabello's wall of sound, visceral flavor. David Brown's arranger wisdom, and Gregg Rolie the harmonic architect. The Woodstock documentary included a now famous rain chant before Santana. This was actually captured that same day and mixed in post-production. Soul Sacrifice provided timeless images, the sound of late 60s psycho magic, energy within, collective peace, escaping Vietnam, politics, and empty promises. Soul Sacrifice remains the movie's real thunder, and one of the few bands at their prime, breaking down the rock and roll stereotypes with a multicultural anthem aligned with the concept of Woodstock, the working man's power unit, underdogs turn heroes, a celebration of tradition and heritage on stage. Mexico, Puerto Rico, Nicaragua, and the United States joining forces as America the continent, rivaling British rock with volcanic innovation. All the years of the Santana Blues Band hustle, California dreaming, California jamming, it finally paid off. There was a new group in town who outdid Soul Sacrifice's studio version on that Bethel, New York stage. 500,000 people wondered, where can I buy the album? Santana took Sunday off before heading to Philadelphia's Electric Factory, followed by a 3-day rite of passage at Boston's legendary Tea Party, the same stage where Led Zeppelin crowned themselves kings twice in 1969. And then Santana's debut was released on Saturday, August 30th, with record buyers trying to find the many faces inside the psychedelic design on the cover. Advertising copy added to the hype. It makes you sweat, they said, and a Woodstock photo announced an explosive arrival for world domination. Although it would only last for one album, that groovy typography logo was perfect for 1969. It reflected the sounds of San Francisco to the world. A colorful back cover photograph featured all 6 members with Chepito Areas playing trumpet, although he doesn't play that on the album. Santana 1 saw a 1998 re-release featuring 3 songs from their Woodstock setlist. The 2004 Legacy Edition expanded this to alternate takes on CD1 plus a 7-minute studio jam. CD2 featured the original January 1969 Columbia Studio Sessions, tracks 1-6, plus a complete setlist at Woodstock. A special set, The Woodstock Experience, was released in 2009 with the original studio album and live set plus a double-sided promo poster. True to its audiophile mix, Mobile Fidelity and Mastered Sounds editions have delighted fans of this album through the years. Santana resumed touring with a historic August 31st performance at the Texas International Pop Festival, sharing the thunder with Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin in a list of heavy hitters. The New Orleans Pop Festival was next on September 1st with fellow Woodstock friends, as audiences couldn't get enough peace and love thrills. And LSD probably. Santana returned to San Francisco for a homecoming celebration 4 nights at Fillmore West. Word was out on their festival success. They kept touring California midway through October before hitting the road with destination Cincinnati, Minneapolis, 3 nights at Chicago's Kinetic Playground, and 1 historic TV appearance at the Ed Sullivan Show in New York City on October 24th, which you can find on the 1988 VHS for Viva Santana. A pivotal performance for mainstream America, visible to rock fans across the country, with Woodstock's documentary still 5 months away from its theatrical release. Recreating the spellbinding compression of their studio sound proved to be difficult on stage with the existing PA systems, but they carried through with much focus and telepathy on stage. Jingle was released as a single on the 25th, charting up to number 56 on Billboard, while concert demand grew steady in Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Providence, and a second visit to New York's Fillmore East. They kept touring all the way through November, with their debut peaking at number 4 on Billboard on the 15th. Sales-wise, they landed at a respectable 1969 spot, in between both Creedence albums, Bayou Country and Willie and the Poor Boys. Santana beat Grand Funk, Rare Earth, The Grateful Dead, and Jefferson Airplane. Santana was the 6th best-selling American rock band that year. They couldn't stop now. Santana was now in full tour support of their album all through December 31st, including an opening spot at the now infamous Altamont Festival on the 6th, where Carlos switched guitars in favor of a natural finish Gibson Les Paul. Their 6-song setlist included Chico Hamilton's Conquistadore Rides Again and a brand new idea, Gumbo, which they kept for their 3rd album, Kinda. Just like Woodstock, a historic show for Santana, sharing the bill with Jefferson Airplane, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and British legends, the Rolling Stones.
Santana's gonna lead it.
Oh, no, violence, man. Peace! I've never learned how to party yet. You don't fucking up this whole thing.
Everybody just settle down now so we can get on with the show.
The Santana Lion effect continued into 1970 with more East Coast visits, breaking grounds outside California. Hit single Evil Ways was released in January, peaking at number 9. They celebrated their success, but the pressure grew by the minute. Could they deliver a worthy follow-up, or would they call it quits, saying "se acabó"? They looked into the singing winds for answers. The Woodstock Heroes, Columbia Records' Golden Child, the sounds of San Francisco.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you from San Francisco to you. Thank you very much. I got to turn on the order. It takes a while. It's nice to be here in New York. We are in New York.